Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon here with Imran and myself. For those who don't know, I'm Patricia Rogan-Faber, and I do a podcast show to help people maximize property values. It is called Maximizing Property Values. It's very original. It's on all your popular platforms, so you can find it on Apple, on Spotify, on Google, on Audible. And there's a link to some of the listening platforms above. That, however, is a monologue. But now since November, not really now, not anymore. It's more than half a year ago. Since November, I've added a guest series. And my guest today is Imran Shaikh. Let's get to know Imran a bit more today. So, who is Imran? Imran is, well, wait for this. He is. I'm just going to do a brief intro, and then later on, Imran, you can fill in the gaps. He
Sure.
is the director in Easy Global Limited, which is a family-run business, and his focus is on producing high-end properties. Now, Imran, welcome to Maximising Property Values. But before we go into your main property activities, let's get to know you better. And this is my nosiness coming into play.
Oh no, here it goes.
um, so I've got for you 5 questions. No, six. Five questions. So your first one is this: what did working at Cisco for 15 plus years add to your property development skills?
Good question. So, if you don't mind, I'll take a step back. Well, first of all, I'm very privileged to be invited and share the stage with you, to be interviewed by you. So I'm certainly looking forward to this event for a number of weeks, and I'm happy to be here, happy to share. And like I always say, whenever I do speak in Clubhouse, I'm always learning, and this is a fantastic experience that I'm sharing with you. Coming back to your question, Cisco is and has been a one of the top IT companies in the world for the last 30 years. The reason why I say this is for those in the sector, Cisco is an extremely well known brand. However, for those not in the sector, they need to appreciate that this is one of the top 5 companies that has performed at that level for the last 30 years continuously. So for me to actually get to Cisco was a journey in itself, and maybe we get to talk about that at some point today. But while I was there, sustaining that career for 15 and a half, 16 years was in itself a phenomenal experience. An experience of self-development as a person, an experience of development in my career from a career perspective, and certainly, like you rightly pointed out, a development of my property journey as well. Now, you specifically homed in on property development. Now, property development, if we were to double click on that for a second, one can appreciate it brings together a lot of different skills. You don't necessarily need to be, and I'm certainly not, a hands on person when it comes to any specific trade, although I'm fairly good with DIY, but I'm not a skilled trades person. I have no intentions of being a skilled trade person. But as a property developer, my role is to find the deals, to structure the deals, to make the deal happen. Is to then, once that's acquired, then the next phase is to bring the team together, orchestrate the entire development process, and once it's complete, to obviously offer the product back into the market, close shop, and move on again. So, as a property developer, you can appreciate there's a lot of multiple skills involved. Certainly, from my IT career, I can see because in IT, I wasn't just an engineer. I mean, I started off in a technical capacity, But then very quickly, I moved into business strategy, into development, as in partner development, into a sales leadership role. So a lot of the skills that I developed over the years, I'm now finding that I'm leveraging a lot of those skills into my property profession. Back to you.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Imran. So you are a bit then of a matchmaker. You're putting things together. You're bringing the team together. You are, matching the right team to the right opportunity, and then seeing it through. So we would love to hear a lot more about that. So in a minute, though. Now, okay, so your second question is this. What was your best moment in Cisco? Can you just paint that picture for us?
Oh, that's there are quite a few actually.
Oh,
But let's start with the very beginning, right? So, the very beginning was I graduated as a civil engineer. And let me know if you have another question around this topic, in which case I'll stop there. But I'll give you a bit more background about me. So I graduated as a civil engineer from University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, and when I graduated, I knew that wasn't the career I was gonna move forward with. But of course, if I start something, I have to finish it. So I finished it with a degree, an honors degree, and once that was done, I said to my dad, "This is not the career that I'm going to move forward with." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean? You just spent 4 years studying for this degree, and now that you've graduated, you want to do something else." I said, "Exactly." He goes, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" And I said to him, "Well, I'm going to move into IT." And he goes, "Well, exactly how are you going to do that?" Because I mean, I was extremely good with computers, but I didn't have an official degree at the time. And I told my dad about Microsoft. I told him about Cisco and what my route was going to be. And he said to me, "Well, all right, why don't you do another degree at university, do a conversion course?" I said, "Well, that's not a bad suggestion, but the route that I'm planning to take is going to be more of a fast track." He wasn't convinced, but I did say to him, "Well, give me 12 months. This is what I need to do. I will need you to help me on these couple of things, but I will call on you when I need your help. But in 12 months, this is the time I need to sort it out. Otherwise, I'll do what you're saying, a conversion degree in IT at university." Fast forward a couple of years, my dream was always to get into Cisco. Like I said, it was the number one brand at the time, and that was the thing to do. At the time, I was very technical. The certification that I wanted to achieve, there were only 4,500 people in the world with that certification. And that certification, not only did it pay extremely well, and we're talking about the early 2000s here, not only did it pay extremely well, which is a motivation in itself, but it was extremely prestigious. You actually got a label, you actually got a number, and you were one of 4,500 people in the world. So for me, the dream always was not to just achieve that certification, but to actually work for the company that offered that certification. And the vendor was Cisco. So I remember I got interviewed by Cisco. They amazingly, they found me on one of these job sites. They found my CV, and I kind of matched a particular project that they were looking to roll out. And they interviewed me, and I remember going into the Cisco office, and it was as if I was in Mecca, so to speak. Right? I just landed in Mecca. Obviously, I hadn't been hired yet, but the mere fact that I stepped in, it was one step closer towards my ultimate aim. And I remember getting interviewed by them back to back, 4 interviews, 1 hour each. And I wasn't prepared for that. So they kind of dropped that bombshell on me when I turned up for the first interview. I thought it was just going to be one interview, but there were 4 interviews back to back. And then after the fourth interview, which was extremely tiring, they said to me, "What's your calendar like for the rest of the day?" And in hindsight, I should have actually made something up, but I was being extremely honest. So I said to them, "I've got nothing planned for the rest of the day." So they said, well, why don't we take you to this virtual office? We're going to leave you there for 90 minutes. And here is a test paper. And I'm like, wow, it would have been nice for someone to have told me about this because I would have been more prepared. But they gave me an examination and they were asking me all sorts of questions, questions that I had no idea about. I probably answered maybe 45, tops 50% of that paper. The rest of the technology I had no idea about. But I think what I now realize, or what I subsequently realized, these guys were trying to see how I worked under pressure. So I did that for about 90 minutes. They then had a further interview with me. And then a couple of weeks later, I got offered the job. So for me, getting offered that job with Cisco, for me, was probably the best moment of my life at that point in time, because it was me proving to my dad that I knew what I was doing. I had a goal. I could set out the path. And with the effort that I put in, and obviously with his support and everyone else's support, I managed to achieve that particular goal.
Wow. I don't know that I could have done what you did. 4 interviews back to back when you were only expecting one, and then an exam. But as you say, it all worked out absolutely great. And you painted such a vivid picture of when you stepped into their building, like it was as if like you'd landed in Mecca. And I can just, I could literally just feel the air conditioning in the lobby, and smart people behind a desk asking you your name. Maybe you'd gone through security, then there'd be a badge for you to put on, then they'd direct you to the bank of lifts, and everything would be like shiny with like marble. And oh yep. Where was the interview? What country? What continent?
In the UK, in Stockley Park, back then the offices were in Stockley Park, but then we moved from Stockley Park to Bedfont Lakes. Stockley Park for me was impressive. Prior to Cisco, I worked for the NHS. I worked for King's College Hospital. So even though King's College Hospital is a flagship hospital, but it's still a public sector building. It's the NHS, so you can appreciate it's not opulent. It's very functional. You're surrounded by amazing people in the NHS, people that I still keep, some of which I still keep in touch with, but a great part of my professional career as well. But Cisco is different. Cisco is a flagship, like you painted it. It was opulent, but not too opulent, at least not Stockley Park. But then we moved into our flagship offices, which were in Bedfont Lakes, which is in Feltham. And Feltham doesn't sound that great because it's right next to the Young Offenders Institute. But trust me when I say those offices were not just the best offices in for Cisco in the UK, but they are one of the best offices for Cisco globally. And those were the flagship offices. Me being customer facing that I was for most of my career, it was a fantastic privilege to invite customers and also partners over to those offices to show them the latest and the greatest of technology and help them pivot their organizations for the next 5 to 7 years. So a fantastic time in that company. Like I said, developed significantly professionally, but also developed even more importantly from a individual and from a person perspective.
Wow. Well, you see, Imran, just like you, I'm all about balance. So, your third question is, what was your worst experience in Cisco, or worst moment? If you had any.
Yeah,
Well, actually, yeah,
yeah,
the worst you would have. But it might not be that bad, but in comparison, it would be right there at the bottom.
yeah. So it's funny you asked me that question because over the last probably 4 to 5 years, as a person, as a mindset, I've tried to just focus on positive things. So obviously, when we go through our life journey, you do have your ups and your downs, but I've tried to brush those downs aside But now that you put me on the spot, without going into too many details, what I will say is, and this is one of the reasons why I decided to take a sabbatical from the career, and that sabbatical has turned into effectively a retirement. It was the politics. I grew quite fast at the company or the companies because I did leave Cisco and I joined another company after that. I'm the type of guy where whether it's my idea or someone else's idea, if it's a good idea and we have buy-in, I want to make things happen. Because if it's a good idea, it's a good idea because it helps the company, it helps the partners, it helps the customers, and from a business perspective, it makes sense. So if you have all those check boxes, just go and make it happen. That's my mentality. And what I was noticing with some of these situations that I was in, there were a lot of political barriers, and that those political barriers stopped us from achieving what we wanted to achieve and what we could have achieved. So obviously, as a team, we achieved a lot, but I think in certain situations we could have done a lot more. And this is not unique to any specific company. You notice this with many corporates. It's I guess it's human nature. Although the companies that I worked for had phenomenal cultures, but nevertheless, we're still human beings, and with human beings, sometimes politics comes in the way and it stops us from being the best that we possibly can.
Wow, I certainly feel you there, Imran. Um, and it's really sad, isn't it? Because you get politics in all of these, like, corporate, organizations. And like you say, it actually holds things back. You imagine where, they'd be if there was none of that nonsense. But, I guess where you've got human beings, you'll always have people playing games and posturing and, trying to climb up on the backs of others and, all whatnot. But yeah, I definitely hear you there. So you've got two more questions, two more.
I'm
So,
enjoying this actually, Patricia.
oh, are you? Okay, great stuff. Great stuff.
I
Um,
feel like this is a Cisco interview again.
Now I feel a little bit bad because I did not tell you how many questions you were going to have, nor what your questions were going to be. But
That's
do you
true.
know what? I couldn't have picked a better person to ask
Thank
five
you.
questions of, because you've been doing this all your life, being put on the spot and rising to it. Not only rising, just soaring, really. Okay. So, but we will end on a positive question. But so this is your penultimate question. What to date has been your worst property moment?
Oh, okay. Quite a few actually.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it's okay. These are all learning experiences. These are all learning opportunities. And the other thing I'll say to those listening in today and those listening in the future is if you stick at it in the long term, it will always work out. And obviously, when I say that, I mean from a UK property perspective. I don't profess to know too much about any of the other markets, although I do keep tabs on what's happening in certain areas in the US, because that's a market that does fascinate me as well. And I see a lot of synergies between the US and the UK. But when I say what I say, it's predominantly down to the UK market. So with the worst property. I'll talk about an acquisition, and I have mentioned this in some of the clubhouse rooms before. But since you asked me a very specific question, I'm going to go into a bit more detail. So this was in an auction. It was an auction purchase. I remember having 7 properties in my shortlist, and I called up my dad before I on my way to this auction house, and I told him I'd done my research, I had my short list, and I was very excited. But I was asking him for some guidance, and he said to me, "Look, you've done your numbers, you've done your homework. if you feel it's the right property and you feel that you're getting it at the right figures because you know what your ceiling is, he goes, go for it. And he goes, it's, I don't, when I say what I'm about to say, I don't necessarily want to ridicule the amount of figures involved, but he did say to me, it's not a lot of money. Even if you get it wrong, we'll deal with the situation. And that just, him basically saying that just gave me that boost of confidence that I needed. Because obviously, buying from an auction was an alien experience to me. And this is obviously, we're talking about pre COVID. We're talking about 2017, I think it was, when this actually happened. So 2017, there I am in an auction house. I'm looking at my spreadsheet. I lost four of the shortlisted properties, so I only had three left on my spreadsheet. And then number five came up, and I started bidding. I think there were maybe one or two other people in the room that were bidding as well. And everything that you're not supposed to do, I did, right? And in the end, the hammer fell. I bought the property and obviously I exchanged on the spot, as you have to do. So I effectively now was legally committed. And then after that, I don't like to use the word nightmare, but certainly there were a few surprises. So my solicitor, I reached out to her, family solicitor, and she said to me, "Fine, I can help you complete in 4 weeks, because that was one of the conditions." But she started doing her due diligence, and then she goes, "Have you seen all these extra charges?" I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, the auction house is charging an extra 1 or 2%. I can't remember what the figure is, but let's assume it was 2%." I said, "Yeah, I'm aware of that." And she goes, "But in addition to that, you're paying their legal fees." And I pretended that I was aware of that, but I wasn't. I said, "All right, fine." So internally, I'm saying, "Wow, that's going to cost me an extra grand, £1,500. Then she goes, "In addition to that, you're going to be liable for this." And she kept going on. There were like three or four other things that I wasn't aware of. And that kind of totaled to about 10 to 12,000 pounds, which is a significant amount of money. Now, lucky for me, and I would never recommend this approach to anyone out there, but lucky for me, I got the property at a very attractive price, so I had enough of a buffer in there. And because I wasn't necessarily buying the property to flip, I was buying it to hold. I knew long term the property was going to appreciate, and I still have this property today. But everything that you're not supposed to do in an auction is what I did on that particular day. And I managed to complete in 4 weeks. In fact, if I remember correctly, the vendor and their side, their legal team, were being so obtuse, and they were being so they were deflecting so much. They were not trying to help us complete. In fact, I felt that they were doing everything in their power to try and stall the deal so that I didn't complete. What they didn't realize is that not only did I manage to achieve completing a mortgage in 4 weeks, which I think is going to be an extreme challenge these days. And I'm talking about a buy to let mortgage, not a bridge. So I managed to get a buy to let mortgage in 4 weeks. But even if that hadn't had happened, I was in a position, luckily enough, to buy that property cash. So regardless of how the other party tried to make things difficult for us, I was always in a position to complete. So that's one thing I will say to people is if you are planning to buy in an auction and obviously you then commit on the day by exchanging, make sure you have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C to complete. Otherwise, most likely you forfeit your deposit and perhaps other penalties as well.
Oh, that sounds a bit like a nightmare. But Imran, 1 to 2%, let's say 2%, buyer's premium. That's not bad. I think if I'm not mistaken, the London Borough of Southwark, I think, charges 4.5%, unless somebody's spoken to them and they've changed their ways. But yeah, quite high. There was another one as well. I think Chelsea and Kensington, they might have a really high buyer's premium as well. Um, and they're just absolutely ridiculous. It's like, anyway. So I think apart from time being really kind to you, I think you were also quite lucky because that wasn't too bad. 2%, not too bad.
Yeah, no, not too bad. But like I said, it was the 2%, plus there were other charges as well. So you take the 2% plus another 12 grand on top, and it was a significant bill. But
Yeah.
like I said, I still have the property today. Where are we now? 2022. So 5 years on, or 4.5 years on. It's tenanted, tenants are happy, property's kosher, and I have no intentions to sell. And I actually fixed the mortgage on that a couple of months ago for the next 5 years.
Wow. So that was a bad one. That's turned good. So your last question is this, and I said we are going to finish on a positive note with the questions. To date, what has been your best property moment?
Another good question. There have been a few, but I'll give you, let's say, one of the recent ones. In South London, I took over I bought a 3 bedroom house, and we converted it to a 4 bed HMO. So 4 bed HMOs, that's really one of my strategies. I don't go too big with HMOs. I tend to keep them under the mandatory licensing. So this is like additional licensing category. In the property sector, they call these mini-mos, and I like these mini-mos. These mini-mos work really, really well for me. And this particular property, I converted it to a mini-mo standard. So it had all the fire doors, the interlinked fire alarms, blah, 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 acoustic insulation, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But like one thing that I'm very keen on doing is always having a plan B, because we do know that a lot of these councils are bringing in room banding when it comes to HMOs. So I didn't want to go too crazy with the conversion and turn that property into a specialist HMO environment. I wanted to make sure that it could always be put back to a single dwelling family home, back into the market, just in case the HMO numbers never stacked up. So purchase price was around the 550-ish mark, and we did the conversion. Didn't cost us a lot of money. We did it to a very, very high standard, to a standard that my family would be proud of. So my wife and my younger daughter as well. In fact, all of my properties, one of the philosophies I have is, if they're good enough for my 6 year old to live in terms of quality, more importantly, in terms of safety, then it's good enough for my tenants. But with this particular property, I actually went another level, couple of levels up, and went for very good finishes, very good fittings, lovely color scheme, and that property was valued 7 figures. So, in terms of numbers, it's done extremely well, much better than I was expecting.
Ooh, that is definitely, yeah, sounds like an amazing, amazing purchase and development really. Great stuff. So you will be pleased to hear you have finished all of your questions and there is no test for you to take.
Did I
um,
get the job, Patricia?
sorry?
Did I get the job?
You've got the job. Yes. You
Hey!
definitely did. Yes. Um, right. So now let's talk about property. So you are doing, okay, you've spoken about the HMO, which was great. So hopefully we'll get a chance to go into maybe that in a bit more detail. But, right now you just completed, didn't you, on a development that you're going to be doing, and that's going to be a new build. Do you want to? Would you mind telling us a bit about that?
Sure. So we completed on a site acquisition of a development site four weeks ago now. We're in the process of getting all the consultants together so that we can submit for planning permission by the end of the month, and we're on target for doing that. In the meantime, I've rented out that particular bungalow, so at least it's cash flow positive. And I own this, or we own this. It's me and a business partner of mine. We own the asset outright, so it's not costing us in terms of lending, which is a good position to be in. And it's cash flow positive, like I said. Where we are, or where this development is, and this is again in the Richmond borough, which is where I live. I expect planning to take some time. They're not the most easiest council to deal with. But once the planning is approved, which I expect it will be, we're not going too crazy with the development. We're simply building two semi detached houses. These houses are going to be of a premium nature. They're going to fit into what the market actually wants. There is a serious demand for these type of houses, and to the finish that we will be delivering, I have every confidence that we're going to be breaching the ceiling price of this particular area. However, when it comes to numbers, and I am a numbers guy, I always make sure I'm extremely conservative with my numbers. But I always have a conservative plan. I call that my base plan. Then I have a stretch plan, and I have a super stretch plan, depending on how the market evolves. And I do know, I'm completely aware that we're going into some difficult times moving forward. And again, that's baked into my sensitivity analysis as well. So I'm looking forward to how this development materializes. I'm going to be following the journey, and I'm going to be promoting the journey on social media as well. It's going to be more of a inspiration element for other people who are planning to do something similar. In terms of timelines, this is going to be easily the next 18 to 12 months of 18 months to 2 years of my life. So it's going to be very detailed. It's going to be super exciting, and this is one development site of a few others that we're looking at. So there's going to be a lot of activity over the next couple of years.
Wow. So, Imran, you've mentioned, you've used certain words, stroke phrases in what you've just said. So, can you break this down for us? So, you've got you when you're working your numbers, you have a base plan, you have a stretch plan, and you have a super stretch plan, which is amazing because that is like your three exit routes, isn't it? It's like, if this doesn't work, then what about this and what about that? But then you said looking ahead, obviously nobody has a crystal ball, but we know that interest rates are going to go up. uh, but you said you've baked all of this into your sensitivity analysis. Can you just break those words stroke phrases down for us, so that if there's anyone who doesn't know very much about property and they're listening to this, either like, as you said, on Clubhouse until it gets released as a podcast next week, Wednesday. So this recording is going to be on Clubhouse for a week, and then on Wednesday it will come off of Clubhouse completely, and it will be released as a podcast. So, and just in case like people don't know anything about these kind of terms and or phrases, can you just break them down for us, please?
Sure. And in very simple terms, when we do things like sensitivity analysis, you're effectively doing what if simulation models, right? So you do your numbers based on some variables. Okay, let's say not even estimates. Let's say based on actuals today, for argument's sake. But actuals tomorrow might be completely different to actuals today. So, one simple example, when we think about build costs, let's say the build costs in London are around £200 a square foot. So that's your base build cost. But you always need to put a contingency in there. And roughly speaking, contingency is 10%. So immediately from £200 a square foot, you're going up to £220 a square foot. And you're trying to make sure that that deal works at £220 a square foot. When you speak to some lenders today, they're telling us even 10% isn't enough. You need to have 15% contingency. So, fine, then you work out another scenario and you put in 15% contingency just for the build costs and you see if the deal stacks up. Meaning, is it still profitable? Does the deal have enough margin in there for you to make money? Does it have enough margin in there for you to obviously pay all your contractors, your tradespeople, etc., not to mention your professionals, not to mention, most importantly, the person or the firm that will probably have a first charge on your property, the lender. So it's very important to make sure that the deal always stacks up, right? The other thing to bear in mind is, and this is another variable, but there are quite a few variables. So you've got to decide how you want to simulate this, and this is where the sensitivity analysis comes in. You could do many different simulations, but at the end of the day, at some point, analysis equals paralysis. So you've got to do that fine balance and say, well, how much is enough? And enough, and at that point, you realize that you've actually carved out the worst case scenario, you've carved out the most expected scenario, and you've carved out the best case scenario. And if you've got those three, not only should you be content, most importantly, your lender will appreciate that as well because they will see that you have understood not just the current market parameters and the market dynamics, but you've actually factored in an element of the future as well. I'll give you one example before I hand the mic back to you. You spoke about interest rates. So let's say today interest rates for debt finance around 7% to 8% a year. What if that goes up to double digits, let's say 10%? Is the deal, does it still stack up? Is it still above water? That's again part of your sensitivity analysis, right? So it can get very complicated, like I said, but there are certain simulations that, in my opinion, based on what we're predicting to happen in the future, are an absolute must do today in order to present the best case to yourself, because ultimately we are in the business where we're taking calculated risks, not silly risks, calculated risks. And at the same time, you're presenting a professional look to your lender, your financier, maybe your private investors, whoever they might be.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Imran. Right, so this development that you're doing, the two semis, how many bedrooms are they going to be?
Good question. 5 bedrooms. 5 bedrooms,
Oh,
four en
oh, that,
suites with a facility on the ground floor.
wow. Oh, I can see that doing so well in Richmond. 5 bed. So those are executive homes. Oh, amazing.
No,
Oh,
I
are
wouldn't
they?
say no. Executive homes are probably another level up. And this particular area wouldn't cater for that. So these are, I would say, family homes. They are going to be built to a very good standard, a very, very good standard. But I wouldn't necessarily say that these are going to be executive homes. That's another price bracket that this particular market wouldn't warrant.
Ah, okay, okay. It's just that when I heard, 5 bedrooms, four en suites, half a bathroom downstairs, I thought, okay, cool. Executive, and with the finish that you said you were going to, but it still sounds very, very exciting. Um, so, can you do you have a picture in mind of what you'd like to see at the end of it, or is that still a work? Obviously, it's going to be a work in progress, but right now, have you do you envisage anything in particular that's in your mind that you're going to be saying to the architect and or your designer? I would like to see this, or I would like to see that, or this color is a color that I'd like us to use in the development. Do you think it's going to work? Is there anything like that going on yet?
So we're having those conversations as we speak. It's me and my business partner. My business partner is a builder, is a developer, and luckily enough, his wife is an interior designer. So I leave those type of conversations in the hands of the professional, although I am actively involved because obviously I understand this market extremely well. I understand when I say market, I'm talking about the customer. When we build or when we develop, even with rental properties, I'm always of the opinion have the end customer in mind. Know who you're actually developing for, building for, refurbing for. Whatever it is that you're doing, always have the end customer in mind. So, in my opinion, time spent understanding who that end customer is will always pay dividends to the project because then you're not guessing. Or if you are guessing, you're limiting the amount of guesswork involved. So, certainly, this market, we already have a very good idea of who the end customer is going to be. We're building the spec to that particular end customer's budget and to the market's budget. But I did say we will push the ceiling price of the market because we like to create a new standard for this market, a new benchmark for this market, for others to then follow. So we want to be trailblazers effectively in what we actually do. But like I said to you, we're not, I've used this phrase before, and sometimes some people shoot me down for using this phrase. We're not the big boys. We're a small boutique residential development firm, and we like to swim in our lane. But in our lane, we know exactly, or we feel we know exactly what it is that we're developing, for who we're developing it, and for what budget that they can actually afford.
Right. So that takes me, Imran, to your very, I love your website. 2 pages, but so, so clear. And I've pinned a link above so people can, tap on that if they want to. And you say very, very simply, we rent, we build, we buy. Oh, I love the simplicity of this website. I just absolutely love it. And then the next page is, contact us. So, Imran, tell can you tell us? So, still on your semis, what size is each one going to be? I'm still building a picture in my head, and as I did say, I am quite nosy.
Uh, the latest, we've gone through multiple iterations. The latest is 300 square meters each.
300
So
square
that's,
meters.
yes,
Oh,
it gives you an idea of how big these houses are going to be. Uh, they will be impressive. Um,
wow.
let's just
300
say,
square meters. You
let's
could
just say that
fit
I
four
can't, I
flats.
can't, I can't afford to buy them.
But what am I even talking about? Four flats. Uh, the smallest flat allowed is 37 square meters. How many 37s can you get in 300? That's nearly 10. So
Yeah,
probably about 8 flats. You can get eight
8 flats.
flats in each. Oh my word. So why are you not doing two detached?
Good question. The that was one of our initial plans, but and this brings me to another topic of the life of a developer or a life of a property professional. It's all about weighing risks, and when I say risks, in this case, it's the uncontrollables. The uncontrollables for a developer. One of the uncontrollables for a developer is the planning system. So I don't want to be in a situation where we get shot down by the council for overdevelopment, which is a risk that we might have if we decided to go for too detached, which is why we're playing it very, very safe. We're going with semis. The precedence is there in the immediate vicinity. So much so that one of the applications was put through recently for two semis and it just flew through. So I'm hoping that this one flies through as well, even though, like I did mention earlier on, the site is owned by us, so there is only our money in the game, so it's not really costing us in terms of interest. But this is not the only site we're looking at. We're actively pursuing a few others. So I really need the planning to be approved as soon as possible, so that we can actually start construction. And then in parallel, there'll be a few other sites that we're in the process of acquiring. And by this site getting planning will actually help us with the other sites that we're looking to acquire. So we're playing the long game. We're quite happy not to, let's say, use the word, be too greedy with every single opportunity. We're going to deliver a phenomenal product that's going to sell. It's going to sell very fast. In fact, I believe it's going to sell off plan. In fact, I'll probably end up selling it off plan. So there's a bit of a running competition between me and the agents that we've already lined up. Let's see who sells first. If I sell it, sorry, if the agent sells it, of course I pay the agent. But if I sell it, the agent has to pay me. So let's see how that one pans out.
Wow. But honestly, Imran, there's something in my brain. I hate figures, okay? But there is something in my brain that always seems to veer towards where the most money might be. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, whatever it is that is in there is saying to me, detached, detached, detached. But how, did you guys not maybe, because, oh, because I guess I'm just thinking, it's such a big house and a lot. I don't know. I guess it's anyone would be lucky to live there in any event. But I'm just wondering, why not do pre-planning? That'll be an extra 4 weeks, 4-ish weeks on top of your existing, and you've got both sets of plans. Because
So
at
let's put it.
300 square meters, I'm thinking that to my mind, I'm thinking to then be attached to something else. Oof.
Let's put it this way. Um, the team that I have, including the planning consultants, the architects, etc. We've had this conversation with them, and like I said, we had multiple schemes that we were looking at, and after an extensive deliberation, this is the scheme that we're running with. And my preference would have always been too detached for the reasons that you mentioned, but bearing in mind the council that we're dealing with, the timelines involved, this is the best we can do. And the other thing I'll say is, when you look at the numbers, it really doesn't make too much of a difference.
Do you know that is the most important thing, isn't it? What difference does it make, detached versus semi? But oh, Imran, please promise me that once you do this, you will invite me to come and have a look, because
Of
I
course.
I I cannot, I'd love to be able to walk through a 300 square meter house. Oh goodness, yeah, it just sounds so exciting. So congratulations, guys. You're on the first, path to getting what you want. You've got the property, it's cash flowing at the moment, so the rest of it, until you start to build, is admin. um so well done, and congrats.
Thank you.
um Now, going back, I think we've just got enough time to talk about this. Your HMO. So that's something that you bought for roughly about 550. You didn't do too much to it because you didn't, you were again mitigating the risk of the council coming in with their single banding, and it's valued up at seven figures. So
Correct.
that is nearly twice as much. Can you just talk us through, just you can skirt around, the main issues, but what area is it in? What sizes are the rooms? What kind of tenant do you have in there? Obviously, you put in fire doors, you did the alarm system, and all of that. What makes that? What has made that property go up in value so much? When was it bought? When was it valued? Those kind of details would be lovely if you could share.
Yeah, so it was bought about 6 years ago. It was rented as a single dwelling, modern construction, so it's a 90s construction, but quite tired looking. And it was a bit neglected. Um, and what I did was I freshened it up. Um, I think the area that it's in South London is obviously very high end, and the area is appreciated significantly. So not all of the credit goes to what I've done to the property. I think the market has come to me as well. And this is what I say to people who are looking to invest in property. You have to be in the game to win it. And the longer you're in the game, the more chances you have of winning. But at the same time, the work that we did, I'm extremely proud of. We've gone for a very good spec. We've rented it out as a HMO, and as a HMO, it's yielding extremely well, extremely positively. I have 4 people living in the property. I'm lucky that those 4 people are childhood friends, so they've known each other for a very long time. So I don't have any challenges with who's drinking my milk or who's stealing my bread slices or any of that sort of rubbish. And the other thing I do with my minimos is I don't deal with the bills. The bills are the responsibility of the tenants, including the council tax, etc. So, which is why I say it's a bit of a hybrid model. I run them as a single let, but I charge them as a HMO, and obviously they're licensed as a HMO. They're refurbed as a HMO, so all the safety standards, the minimum space requirements, are all HMO standards. The other thing I'll say to people is this is in Southwark Council. So Southwark Council has different minimum room size requirements. For a single occupant, it's 8 square meters rather than 6.53. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, when you're actually in a typical house in London that are traditionally 3.5 bedrooms, it's always the fourth bedroom where you have a problem. And we had that problem with this house as well, which is why we had to move walls around, internal walls around. But like I said, because it was a 90s construction, we're talking about stud walls here rather than solid walls. So the job wasn't too taxing. But if I were to show you before and after figures, the property is unrecognizable. And for someone like me, and I'm sure you're the same, when you look at the final product, that's when you go, it was absolutely worth it. The effort, the time, the risk, the trials and tribulations of dealing with tradespeople, suppliers, missed deliveries, failed return deadlines, and all sorts of stuff. Because obviously these can be very complicated, very stressful, but ultimately it was absolutely worth it. And I do remember when I put this on the market in Q4 of last year, within 24 hours, I had 51 inquiries through Open Rent, which caught me completely off guard because I wasn't expecting so much interest. And then I had to shortlist that down to 10 people or 10 parties that I wanted to speak to. And there was a bit of a bidding war. And I didn't want the bidding war to go too crazy, because for me, it's not just about the money. More importantly, it's about the people, my customers that are going to be living in my property and looking after my asset, albeit it's their home. And that's what's important, because ultimately it's their home, but it's still my asset.
So, Imran, please, I'm going to ask you to share with us on social media so that we can actually see what was done. But you said something, trials and tribulations, and I'm just thinking that is a really good note on which to start drawing this to a close. In that, as good as things are, they're not going to happen overnight. You put in effort, you put in money, you put in sweat, some people put in blood as well. And and you know what, if you've done all of your calculations as you do in the beginning and they work out, it will work out in the end. But when people say, oh, I'm just going to buy this and do that, and I'll double my money. Trials and tribulations, guys, I want you to think about that. It's not easy. It's definitely worth it. Well, in my experience, in your experience, Imran, definitely worth it. But you will be tried sometimes on a daily basis. But if you are able to look ahead and say, and what I say to myself is, this is just for a season. This is just for a season, because it will all end, and then you'll have something that's just going to put a permanent smile on your face and lots of money in your pockets if you are Imran. But Imran,
It's too generous, Patricia, too generous.
no. I like to say the truth. But I'm so glad that you came on here. Thank you very, very much. And if you're in the room and you're not following Imran, please just tap on his picture and follow him, because you don't want to miss what he's going to be sharing with people. And whilst you're following him, tap on the bell icon as well. So anytime he's talking, you will get notified, and then you will get to hear about this development as it's happening. And you might learn a lot from it. I know that I'm going to learn a lot from it, because just like Imran said, I also love learning, as long as it hasn't got anything to do with figures. Figures, do you know what? No, I'd rather not learn. But anything else, I'm really interested. So guys, yeah, follow Imran and tick off, click the bell icon so that you are also notified, when he's talking, like I said. And next week we've got another well, so Imran and I, we are co-moderators in the morning in a room called UK Property Secrets. And we've got another lady from UK Property Secrets who is coming on next week, Pat Caesar. Now, she's into serviced accommodation and she operates in Kent. So if you want to meet Pat Caesar, come back next week on Wednesday at 12 noon to get to meet her. And if you like these podcasts, please just subscribe to the show and review them. Um, you, and honestly, I'm not one of these people who will get really fussy if people give me bad reviews. I like reviews because it lets me just kind of like just weigh up where I am. Can I improve things? It doesn't mean that if people review, I am going to change to what they've said. No, but it will allow me to actually think about what they're saying and say, okay, is this, a good thing for me to be considering and implementing or not? So please do review, the podcasts. And I tell you, I won't be precious about, anything that you say. Um, and once more, thank you very much for spending your afternoon, with Imran and myself. And I wish you a happy week. Imran, thank you so much.
Patricia, before we close, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to bring me on. And certainly to those listening in, I would say certainly subscribe to the podcast and look at the podcast, look at all the different episodes that, Patricia, you've made available through this series. And tune into some of the other people, some of the other episodes, because what I find fascinating with certainly the podcast series that you've actually done is, despite the fact many of the people that you invite are in the property sector and are property professionals, they all come at it from a completely different angle. And that's what fascinates me, right? So we're all doing maybe similar things, but we're doing it in our approach. It's completely unique. And that's what's fascinating about property. That's what's fascinating about business in general.
Thank you, Imran. So thank you guys, and thank you for the comments in the room chat. And see you next week, hopefully.
Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, everyone. Take care.